Welcome to the STARS program, seniors taking active roles in society. And now, here's your host, Anita Finley.
This is our Book of the Month author. And, you know, we've been doing this for years, so many years. I don't know, maybe it's 15, 20. And we have great authors. They come from the medical field. They come from all over. But it's the first time I think I have ever had an author from Hawaii. And when I received Pamela Varma Brown's books, I was just mesmerized. First of all, they were so colorful. And then when I usually just wanted to see if it's something we want, and I started just going through it quickly, and I just couldn't put it down. The stories of so many of the people there in a place called Kauai. And I'm going to let Pamela talk about that. So thanks for being with us from Hawaii, from actually in Hawaii at a place called Kauai, right?
Exactly. The island is called Kauai, and as we say, aloha, which means hello and goodbye, and it also means love, but for now it means hello.
Okay, hello.
And thank you for having me, and I'm thrilled you enjoyed the stories.
Let me ask you before you even get started, how did you wind up there?
That's always a great question to ask people on this very small island. There are a number of people who have been born and raised here, but I am a transplant. I've been here about 28 years. And my then husband and I came here on vacation and absolutely fell in love with the place. And we thought, wow, if you could get work here, why wouldn't you live here? So 5 weeks later, we lived here.
That's a
and
nice
he was here
story.
with me for 17 years, and he moved back to the mainland, as we call the continental U.S., and I've stayed here, so I'm at just about 28 years, and I cannot imagine living anywhere else.
Well, you make
and I'm originally from Los Angeles, if that tells you anything.
That really is a big change. But
yes.
you really, I can see why you love it. You love the people, you love the tradition, you love everything. So if someone were to pick up your book, Kauai Stories, what are they going to find? I know, but why don't you share that with them and how it even came about?
Okay, well, in a nutshell, there are two Kauai Stories. There's Kauai Stories 1 and Kauai Stories 2, and each one is a collection of about 50 people's personal stories about their lives here on the island. And the topics run the gamut. They're as varied as everybody's lives are, but there's an undercurrent of life on a beautiful, lush, small tropical island. And with the host culture being Hawaiian, there are Hawaiian traditions that weave through all of our lives. And what each of the stories are is the person or a person speaking, and a couple times it's two people per story, speaking directly to you as the reader. So you feel like you're sitting down with them. It's sort of like if you maybe you read a magazine article about somebody and they seem kind of interesting and you think, wow, I'd love to just sit down and have coffee with them and ask them a bunch of questions about their life or hear them talk more. That's what these stories are like, primarily because that's exactly what I did, is I sat down with various people and we just chatted, or as we say here in Hawaii, we talked story, about all various aspects of their life. And I'm a professional writer and editor, so I took what they told me and put it in a very comfortable, readable form and edited it up. So
you sure did.
Really smoothly, yeah.
Pamela, you sure did. I mean, everyone, in fact, I learned about the hula. I did not know about the history of the hula, and I loved it.
It's a lot different than people think, isn't it?
Why don't you tell people a little bit about that?
Well, hula, as we know it, is a very beautiful, graceful dance. But in ancient times, when there were only Hawaiians in Hawaii, and I'll touch more on that in a moment, how there's so many others of us here in Hawaii now, but when it was just Hawaiians, the hula was done only by men, and it was more like a training ritual for warriors. It was very fierce and powerful. And as a matter of fact, there are some hula schools that still will dance. Some of their hula, they will dance like that. It's the ancient style called kahiko hula, which means ancient or traditional. And you can feel the power just watching these men dance like that. And actually, women now will dance Kahiko style as well. And then in the 1800s, when the missionaries came to Hawaii, a lot of things changed. Hawaiians were told to put on some clothes and to not dance in quite as provocative manner. And so the dance changed to what a lot of people recognize it as now, and that is called hula awana, which is a more modern form. It's real graceful and flowing, and instead of things like skirts made out of tea leaves, and by tea, that's spelled T-I, not tea like you drink, but there's something called the tea plant that has long green or red leaves. So instead of dancing in tea leaf skirts, for example, women now will dress in lovely dresses, very modest, beautiful dresses, and the movements are more flowing and graceful. I'm partial to watching the old style. The power is just amazing. I sit and watch it transfixed. But yeah, as it came through also a tradition of only chanting and no music, because in the early years, hula wasn't done to music, and as a matter of fact, in those years, the Hawaiian language was not written. There was no written form of the Hawaiian language. It was strictly oral. So the way traditions and life lessons and really anything that Hawaiians wanted to talk about, how the only way those were passed down from generation to generation was by chants. So now when a hula group is about to begin performing, there is an opening chant that is done, and often there's a chant that is done at the end of the dance. So traditional hula is, in my opinion, a lot more beautiful and a lot more powerful than the kind of cellophane grass skirt kind that you see on TV sometimes.
Right. Well,
it's really amazing. You know, when we introduce real hula, people to real hula here, they're just amazed.
Well, the other thing, and I really spent a lot of time in the world of the arts, was, of course, your illustrator.
Oh, is she amazing?
I just can't get over it. And the fact that her name's, I guess, Fanny Bilodeau?
Yeah, Fanny Bilodeau. And she is as sweet as her art is delightful. And, you know, I have to tell you, I had long admired her art but never met her until we went to interview her. My boyfriend said, hey, you don't have a story of a painter in your book, and people love to do art here in Hawaii. And I thought, well, that's right. Let's call this woman Fanny Bilodeau. And she couldn't have been more delightful. She is super sweet. And I had mentioned to her, you know, I have envisioned the cover of my book being an old-style Hawaiian cottage. And she said, well, you're welcome to use any of the cottages that I've painted. And I was recording the interview with her at the time, you know, about her life story, and we were right in the middle of her interview when we had this conversation, and I was thinking, yes, we've got that on record, you know. And true to her word, she let us use this lovely image that's on the front of Kauai Stories. It's an old wooden cottage with a metal roof, and it's engulfed in bougainvillea and other vegetation, which is exactly what happens here in Hawaii. Things grow so fast that if you don't keep your vegetation trimmed, it will take over cars, houses, anything in its way. And then when we bumped into her one night, maybe a year after the first Kauai Stories was published, and we saw her in a bakery one night, and she said, what are you doing? And I said, I'm almost done with Kauai Stories too. And she says, well, if any art that you want for the cover of that, just let me know. And so when we were ready, we went to her house and said, is that offer still open? And she said, of course. So we looked through all her images, and I didn't see anything that just felt quite right. So she closed the book of her images we were looking through, and she said, just tell me what you have in mind. So I pulled out this very crumpled, tattered napkin that I had written on while my boyfriend and I were sitting in a restaurant. And we were trying to envision what we'd like the cover to be. And I'm no artist, I'm a writer. so this napkin was very embarrassing to show a real artist. I'd actually labeled what was the ocean and what was a tree because it was my artwork was so bad I didn't know if she'd be able to tell. And she saw it. She says, I see it. I see it. She goes, well, would a month be okay? And I said, you mean you would paint this for us? And she goes, yeah, but I couldn't do it for a month. That's insane. That's perfect. And sure enough, she painted the cover for Kauai Stories too, and it is perfect.
Well, do you live in something like this?
I'm sorry?
Do you live in a cottage like this?
No, actually, my house is pretty contemporary. But one day I would love a little beach cottage, just like on the front of Volume 2 that's right by the ocean. I live about 4 miles from the ocean. But you know what's so cool about the story with Fanny and her art is not only illustrating what a delightful woman she is, but that is how people in Hawaii, and I find especially on Kauai, are. The level of kindness here is amazing. And people are just that way naturally and normally. And most people who can't sustain that kind of kindness don't last too long on this island. They end up moving away.
Well, let me say something to you, Pamela Brown, that your books were so inspirational that, and I have not been to Hawaii. My husband was, but I've not. And if I ever come there, I will go to your island. I will go to Kauai immediately because I could live there. After hearing all those people that you interviewed, I mean, I love them. I don't even know them. I love them. I wish. And you did some pictures. Were very neat.
Yeah, you have some photos per volume.
Mm-hmm. I just think you did a fantastic job. I'm so glad that we got to do this because, you know, here even the pineapples, the stuff that plantations, and of course we all think of pineapple plantations in Hawaii, but you made everything. Well, it wasn't. You didn't write. I mean, you were talking with the people who were discussing all this with you, but I know it could never have come out the way they spoke it. You had to take it and make it feel right without losing what their enthusiasm was.
Oh, exactly. And, you know, it is their words. I don't put words in anybody's mouth. I just can't be as creative and interesting as people are individually. But yes, you are right. There is an art to taking a spoken interview and putting it in readable form. You know, many of us have seen, or I should say, read transcriptions of interviews, and there's a lot of starting and stopping, and most of us speak in half sentences. I mean, with the exception of someone who's a newscaster or who has a speechwriter, you know, most of us speak in partial sentences and start and stop, and, 20 minutes later say, oh, I forgot to tell you this, but that's not convenient or comfortable when you're reading. So I will put things in in what I think is an interesting order, and smooth it all out so you don't read their ums and their ers and things like that. However, it is still all their words. That's why it feels authentic, because it is. It's definitely better than if I was trying to make stuff up.
Right,
sure.
And it's hard to believe that I don't know how long that took you, because you did so many. How many stories was it? About 100.
It's 50 per book, and
Mm-hmm.
the first book actually only took about a year, which I'm kind of proud of, because I not only had an unrelated day job to still pay the bills, but I also was fortunate enough that I interviewed about half the people, and the other half the people for Volume 1 wrote their own stories, and then I would chat with them to insert more of themselves in their writing, because typically when we write, most of us become a little bit too sterile. We try to make it too perfect or too writerly when we're writing about ourselves or trying to tell our own stories. So when I talk with people, they're speaking just like the normal people they are, and I can insert that into whatever they've written. So that only took about a year to come out, so I published it in 2012, and it was the first book I had ever published, and I learned how to publish it myself. And then last year, I completely revamped the entire book, added more photos, changed the physical format, re-edited all the stories.
Huh.
And then a few months later, I finished volume 2. And then later last year, I published 2 books for other people. So then I realized, oh my gosh, I've just founded a publishing company.
That's right. You have a business.
I do. And as a matter of fact, I'm in the middle of 5 books this year. 1 is similar to Kauai Stories. That's my own. And then 4 for other people.
Oh, what a lovely thing.
It's really, I found that telling people's stories is my passion and definitely something I'm good at. But what's really neat and fun is to be able to take somebody's story, like, for example, people who live on the island of Kauai, this island of, I think we're about 550 square miles, and we have population, I think, about 60,000, maybe 65,000 now, and showcase the diversity we have here. So even somebody who lives in a small town in the Midwest can relate with what a lot of these people are talking about, not specifically in being on a pineapple plantation or a sugarcane plantation, but in small town living, where you can go to the post office and see people you know, or like one of the stories in Volume 1, this was my boyfriend's story actually. We have bananas growing in our yard. So one day he put out, each time a bunch of bananas.
Oh, I love that story. I love it. I'm so glad you're telling it. I love that story.
And it's funny, when it happened, we weren't even thinking about writing a story about it. It just came about later, how those things unfold. But each bunch of bananas on our particular trees is like 100, sometimes close to 200 bananas. It's incredible. When I grew up in LA, I had no idea that bananas grew like that. But now that I have them in my yard, we look at the bunches ripening, and there's no way you can eat all that. And even though people sometimes say, well, freeze them, what are you going to do with 150 bananas in your freezer? You need to have some kind of a balanced diet. So we give most of our bananas away every time a stalk ripens. So one night, Lincoln, my boyfriend, says he had put bananas out by our mailbox all day in a box with a note that said free, and people would come and go all day taking bunches of bananas, and it was fun to watch because we live in a cul-de-sac, and those bananas were gone pretty fast, even though we're on a cul-de-sac. But there were still a few hands of bananas left, and so at the end of the day, Lincoln said, I'm going to put some out this evening in case somebody's working the night shift. And I thought, my gosh, how thoughtful of a man is this? I wouldn't even have dawned on me. But at one point when he first moved to Kauai, he had worked a night shift somewhere, and he would get off work at like 11:30 at night. So he had this in his awareness. So he puts the bananas out, and the next morning, or maybe 2 mornings later, with our daily newspaper, he puts his hand in the box to get the daily newspaper, and out comes the paper plus a gallon-size Ziploc bag that had 6 perfectly shaped mini loaves of banana bread. And we were just speechless. We had never heard of nor even conceptualized such a thing. He grew up in a small town in the Midwest. Like I said, I grew up in L.A., that stuff doesn't happen. And even in all my years on Kauai, I'd never had anything like that happen. And with the banana bread was a note from our newspaper carriers, who we had never met to that day, saying, mahalo, which means thank you. Mahalo for the bananas you were kind enough to leave for us. Signed your newspaper carriers, and they put their names. And they even included a fresh gardenia, that the gardenias were in bloom that month.
Oh, I had goosebumps listening to this because I remember reading it. It was preposterous.
Exactly. And what is amazing is not only was the banana bread so incredibly delicious, she doesn't oversweeten it. She's just an amazing baker. This has happened now every single time, literally every single time we put bananas out. And now, of course, we leave a bag specifically with their names on it because we know when they come. And we have become friends with them. We had never even seen them before that moment. We just, the newspaper would show up every morning. Almost like magic, automatically. So we started exchanging notes via the newspaper box, because they would come in those days they would come at like 4 or 5 in the morning, and we'd be sleeping. So we'd put a note in the box the night before. They would see it and write us the note back, and we became friends. One morning we invited them over for brunch once they were done delivering papers, and we started chatting with them. And we found out that their stories were amazing. So I don't know if you had a chance in Kauai Stories 2, in the romance on the Garden Island section of the book, to read their love story. They met, let's see, she just turned about 80, and I think he's 78 years old. They are lively as can be, and they met, I think, about 15 or 20 years ago, and they had both become widowed when their prior spouses died, and he had had some very challenging circumstances, and I'm not going to spoil the surprises because they defy description, when they met in a very unusual way and fell in love. And now they deliver newspapers together every day.
Well,
and a funny epilogue to this story that just took place this morning, as a matter of fact.
Oh, my heavens.
They love their job. And one of the books, I think it's volume 2, has a story from them about how much they love delivering the paper on this small town, in this small island. So they happen to have won a trip to Las Vegas on one of the local radio stations. And they were in our driveway chatting with us a few months ago, and they said, but we don't know what we're going to do because we need somebody to take care of our newspaper route for the week that we're gone.
Oh, no.
Well, Lincoln, my boyfriend, pipes up and says, well, I'll do it.
Oh, my heavens.
Not knowing what he was getting into or how hard they work. So what he did today was he went out. They're going to Vegas next week. So this morning he went on a training run with them, which required him to meet them at the airport. This is what happens when you live on a small island. The newspaper is flown in from the island of Oahu. So they have to meet the airplane at the airport at 2:30 in the morning to get the papers, and then roll them, put them in the bags, and then start off on their delivery route. And he went on the training route yesterday. They waited for like an hour at the airport until they learned that the plane was late and wasn't coming in until 6 a.m. So he came home to nap and went back on the training route today.
Well,
I know.
This was perfect today, knowing that, here you have this. What time is it there now?
Right now it is 8:36.
Well, he'll be exhausted when he comes back.
He just got back right before we got on the phone.
Okay.
And, he looks pretty groggy.
Oh,
he said, I don't know how they do it, but they are peppy as can be.
Sure. Well, you have to continue to do what you do. I mean, this is such a privilege. I've been interviewing authors, and I am going to interview another hour, another half an hour next month. But I just have to tell you that not only reading your books and enjoying this, because that's what I do. I love people as you do, and I interview a lot of people. But I want people to get these books. So let me just help them right now. You've got to go. This is the way you spell it. It's KAUAI stories.net. Just go to page 14 in the April issue, and you'll see the review. You must buy these books. They're going to thrill you. If you are sad or you don't know what you're going to do tomorrow, just read the books. You want to get both of them. They're just so precious. And you can also get it from writepath.net, RWRITE path.net. They are great. You'll learn all about the island. You will see people who, as the author Pamela Varma Brown said, they're very similar. They're just great human beings. They happen to be living in Hawaii. And I love to have a smile on my face. You probably can hear it. The books were splendid. I was so happy that you sent them to us, and then that we were able to do this. So let's just really enjoy things like this. I'm saying this to our audience because we do a lot of medical interviews. We do things on the arts. But this is homespun. This is a place far away, but they're just lovely people. And we have a great author who knows how to take something and make it into something big. It's like taking lemons and making it into a gorgeous lemon pie. Or I should say pineapples and making more bananas, taking a bunch of bananas
bread.
and making them into banana bread. But you are a splendid woman. I wish that I lived closer to you. But as I said in my article, now this is on my bucket list.
Well, perfect. And when you want to come this way, definitely let me know.
Oh, I would. Certainly I would. And I will make sure I do that. So I have a choice when I get there. I have to pick the islands I want to go to. I'll bring my husband, of course. But and this is probably not an island that most people go to.
You know, it's one of the smaller islands. Actually, we're the fourth smallest in size. And it is increasing in popularity as people are realizing they just want something more out of their vacations than sitting by a pool, for example, although you can do that here. The island of Kauai, its nickname is called the Garden Isle, and it really is. Everything is lush and green all the time. As a matter of fact, we had a lot of rain the last couple of days, and now I can see waterfalls from my window.
Oh, you can see waterfalls from your window?
Yeah, I can see
bad.
two from my office and one from the backyard.
Oh,
that's pretty cool. So it's really, really a beautiful place. And for people in Florida, you know, I know you have islands, but our islands are different in that they are not connected by land or roads or bridges. You have to fly between islands. And they are, the topography, I guess is how you would say it,
mm-hmm.
is very... there's a lot of variety. There are canyons. There are mountains that go up. On Kauai, they go up to 4,500 feet high. And because Kauai is the oldest of all the islands at about 5 million years old, the erosion over all the years from all the rain we get here has gouged deep crevices into the mountains. So they're very dramatic looking. And every time of the day, the shadows are different, and you can see the waterfalls in these crevices. It's really beautiful.
Well, Pamela, I hope that the Chamber of Commerce knows what you do for them. And next time, this is about it. We're going to have to go. But next time, maybe we can talk a little bit about the war, World War II, and all that happened there. And maybe we can focus in on some of the particular more interesting stories that you did. So thank you. I appreciate your calling so much.
Thank you so much, Anita.
Yeah, I loved it. And we'll send you a YouTube as soon as we get it done, so you'll be able to hear how great this interview was.
Perfect. Thank you so much. What a pleasure.
Give my love to your guy.
I will.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Okay, take care. Bye.